We all know that the Disney parks are considered the most magical places on Earth, and they were designed to be exactly that. Since the opening of Disneyland in 1955 and then Disney World in 1971, it has been a vacation hotspot for both children and adults. In fact, an average of about 58 million people visit Disney World alone per year. And with such a long and rich history, there will always be a looming, darker side. Since the parks have opened, there have been a reported 91 deaths. Of course, not all of them are brutal, but today we're going to be going over some of the craziest and darkest deaths that have happened at Disney. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sydney, and if you are new here, this is a place where we can talk about true crime, spooky, scary stories, dark history, or anything else I got going on in my brain. And I think we should get right into it because we have 3 very crazy stories out of Disney to cover today. This evening in mid-June was much like any other. A storm had just rolled through Lake Buena Vista, canceling many of the plans that the visitors had that were staying at the Grand Floridian Resort and Spa. A 2-year-old boy named Lane Graves and his family had decided to venture out to the Seven Seas Lagoon, which was a man-made little lake on the resort. And Lane was playing in the sand and had waded just a little bit into the water, and that is when tragedy struck. A sudden splashing sound cut through the calm of the evening, and onlookers turned to see this young boy, and his head had disappeared between the jaws of a giant alligator. And Lane's father, Matt, quickly jumped into action. He jumped into the lake, trying to pull apart this alligator's jaw, trying to get his son free. Unfortunately, though, there was nothing that could really be done as the alligator began to swim, and he swam about 15 to 20 feet out before he completely disappeared under the water, dragging Lane with him. Authorities and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission quickly launched a search, and over the next 16 hours, they hunted, killed, and examined 6 different alligators looking for any signs of Lane. And they did determine that one of the alligators was most likely the one that had attacked the young boy. Authorities were able to find Lane's body just a short distance from where the original attack had occurred. And once an autopsy was done, the medical examiner determined that Lane had died from both a traumatic neck injury and drowning. The authorities quickly ruled that Lane's death was in fact an accident, as gruesome and horrible as it was. And it was also decided that probably an alligator accidentally confused Lane for some kind of prey, like a possum or possibly like a raccoon or an armadillo. Matt, Lane's dad, was taken to a nearby hospital to be treated for cuts on his hands and on one of his feet. And many of the bystanders were offered counseling because they had to see this horrible, gruesome attack. I can't even imagine being there. And all of these situations that we're going to be talking about, it just is like overwhelming that you're relaxing at a lagoon or you're having fun with your family at Disneyland or Disney World, and this could just happen. It's really scary. So I'm glad that they did offer counseling for these people because they probably needed it. Let's talk a little bit about Disney World's alligator problem. So evidently, the day of the attack, at least 2 people reported to Disney workers that they saw alligators in the area, but obviously nothing was done. Not only that, but according to Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, there had been over 220 alligators removed from Disney World between May 2006 and August 2015. That is so many alligators. Some days, multiple alligators would have to be hauled off the property, so this kind of incident was never out of the realm of possibility at Disney World. I'm actually surprised that it hadn't happened sooner. Since this horrific incident, Disney has put up a border wall around the lagoon, as well as warning signs telling visitors not to swim because there are, of course, alligators, and there are also snakes. The Graves family decided not to sue Disney, and I'm assuming this is because it was ruled an accident and Disney probably can't be held liable for things like that. But I wouldn't blame the Graves family for wanting to sue Disney. I mean, this could have been prevented with things like more lifeguards, higher surveillance areas, more restrictions, more signage, more anything. So I'm almost wondering if the Graves family got some sort of compensation from Disney to prevent them from suing the company. I'm not sure, but I was definitely expecting a lawsuit out of this one for sure. Of course, the family hasn't moved on. They're still remembering their son, and they actually created something called the Lane Thomas Foundation, which helps families find organ donors for their children. So this is a really cool foundation that has been made from this horrible situation. So I will link it below if you guys want to go check it out, donate, learn more about it. I suggest it. Disney World actually built a lighthouse statue presented by the Lane Thomas Foundation in honor of Lane. All right, guys, we are going across the country to Disneyland, and we're going to be talking all about the Matterhorn bobsleds. These have always been a classic staple of the park. The Matterhorn bobsleds opened in 1959, and it was the first roller coaster type ride at Disneyland, and it was made to emulate the Swiss Alps, of course, with the same name, Matterhorn. The ride has 2 bobsled seats that can hold up to 6 people per run, and the ride will take you up and through the mountain, plunging you into darkness and past the dreaded Yeti. It has a soft spot in many people's hearts. It's a classic ride of Disneyland. But, of course, we're here because it also has a very dark history. It was January 3rd of 1984, and a 48-year-old woman named Dolly Regina Young and 5 of her friends all piled onto the Matterhorn bobsleds, with Dolly sitting way in the back. The ride was going well, they were having fun until about halfway through. Park goers that were sitting on the Skyway gondola, which at the time went through the Matterhorn bobsleds, they said that when they looked down, they saw Dolly tumble out of her cart and fall down onto the tracks. She attempted to scurry up and off the tracks, but just a mere 33 seconds after the fall, another cart came around the corner. And then in a blink of an eye, the bobsled ended up hitting Dolly head on at about 20 miles per hour. And it ended up slamming into her head and torso, trapping her body underneath the bobsled. The impact had caused the ride to go into an emergency stop, and so this, along with the screams being heard from the ride, alerted the worker, and they quickly ran to the scene, and they saw Dolly's horrifically mangled body. Paramedics were quickly called, but it was too late, and Dolly was pronounced dead at the scene, which of course led authorities to launch a giant investigation trying to figure out how something like this could happen. Authorities quickly discovered that Dolly's seatbelt had been unbuckled, so either she unbuckled the seatbelt herself in maybe an attempt to stand during the ride, or it wasn't properly secured from the get-go, and that caused her to fall. At the time, the seatbelts were straps that were looped through a buckle and then secured with a friction fastener. It almost seems like it's like an airplane type deal, you know, like the kind of like lap belts that you have on an airplane. In my mind's eye, that's what it looks like. Disney quickly denied the claims that Dolly's seatbelt hadn't been securely fastened because it was in their protocol to have the workers double check every single rider before the run started. Once the investigation was completed, authorities decided that Dolly's death had been an accident. Let's take a breather here and talk a little bit about park regulations. Super fun, right? I did talk about park regulations a little bit in a prior video, which I love, and you should watch it if you haven't already. It's a good watch. I promise you'll like it. But anyway, let's dig into it a little bit more because it has a lot to do with all of the accidents, I think, that have happened at Disney. So in 1981, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission decided to stop doing routine inspections on parks like Disney. And this created something called the roller coaster loophole. That meant that stationary parks like Disney could basically do whatever they wanted when it came to safety and regulations. And because of this, after the Matterhorn bobsled incident, Disney officials gave the ride a once-over and had that shit up and running the next day after Dolly died. When I read that, I was like, I'm reading that wrong. I'm reading that wrong. There can't be a way. No, I'm not joking, you guys. A day after the accident, up and running. And not only that, but the car that Dolly was riding in was also put back into circulation. So like, if it was a faulty seatbelt, they're just using it again. They're just using it. Isn't that fucked? In 1985, the seatbelts were replaced with lap belts that look a lot like a car seatbelt. And when they were questioned on this, Disney officials denied any claims that the old seatbelts were unsafe. Basically, they claimed that the company that made the old seatbelts went out of business, and so they had to replace all of the old seatbelts with newer seatbelts. But seems a little suspicious if you ask me. I don't know about that, Disney. A month after the accident, Dolly's husband filed a $5 million lawsuit against Disney. He claimed that there was no way that Dolly would have done anything crazy like taking off her seatbelt or trying to stand up during the ride. He claimed that it was Disney's fault, that the ride was not working properly. After 4 years, they decided to settle out of the public's eye, which is something Disney is very fond of doing. I feel like they'll do anything to settle with the families or the people that are suing them just because it makes them look better, because it's not so big of a deal if it's not like this big public lawsuit. Lastly, we're going to be talking about probably one of the most well-known deaths that have occurred at Disney, and that is the death of Deborah Stone. The brand new America Sings attraction had just opened up where the Carousel of Progress once stood. This ride was basically a guide of American history with the help of some crooning animatronic friends. So park goers would sit in one of the 6 different sections of seats, and then the stage was in the middle, and the stage was stationary. It didn't move or anything, but the seats actually moved, and that would take you to the different scenes of the ride. Disney had employees that would serve as greeters, and they would welcome people to the ride and wish them well as they went. And one of these hostesses was a girl named Deborah Gale Stone. She was known for being beautiful, smart, kind, athletic, and she had gotten this job at Disney to help her save up some money because that coming semester she was going to be going to Iowa State University, so she needed the extra money. This was also an extremely special night for Deborah because earlier in the day she had actually gotten engaged to her boyfriend, and she had called her parents earlier in the evening and had asked their permission for her to marry her boyfriend. So I can only imagine the excitement that Deborah had when she went into work that night. She was probably on cloud 9. I mean, like, her entire life was ahead of her. So exciting. That July night around 11 p.m., Deborah was standing on the left side of the stage, and she had just finished talking to the guests, welcoming them to the ride as the seats began to move. It's kind of vague and unknown how this all happened, but sometime between her 45-second interval to move from one place to another, she had gotten too close to either the moving wall or the stagnant theater wall. And park goers reported hearing screams, although at first they thought it was just part of the ride. And this was coming from Deborah as she was being crushed between these 2 walls. Once one of the riders realized what was happening, they quickly alerted other workers, other staff members, and the ride was quickly stopped, but it was too late. Deborah had already passed away. The ride was closed for a mere 3 days while they investigated and added new safety features. One of these safety features was a light that alerted employees if they got too close to one of the walls, and then later on, they replaced the stationary walls with breakaway ones to prevent another crush. The Stone family did end up suing Disney and were awarded a small amount. And they later stated that this wasn't for the money, it was because they wanted to make sure that Disney understood that they needed to make improvements on these types of rides so that something like this would never happen ever again. I read an article that said that Deborah's father recalled that having to call Deborah's fiance and tell him the news was one of the hardest parts of Deborah's passing. And I can't even imagine that. Losing your daughter, one of the most important people in your lives, and then having to call their fiance and tell them, like, that would just be crushing, of course, like for a father and of course for the fiance as well. So horrible. Although Disney didn't put up a memorial or anything, Deborah's high school actually built a brand new swimming pool and named it after Deborah, as Deborah was an amazing swimmer. Not only that, but some of the students came together, raised their money to create the annual Deborah Stone Award. And this was given to a student that kind of had the same values that Deborah had, you know, kind, smart, athletic, religious, all that stuff. And although it's kind of infuriating that Disney didn't do anything, I'm so glad that the community came together and the school came together to honor this really, really cool person that was taken too soon. But yeah, those were the 3 deaths that I found the most interesting at Disney. I find it fascinating because I found a website that has like the different categories of deaths at Disney, and a lot of them were natural causes. With all of these deaths, I feel like Disney could have done much more. Like, I understand they put up a statue, they gave some settlements and what have you, but if one of my family members, God forbid, died at a corporation like Disney that makes a fuck ton of money all the time, constantly, I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna need a lot of money. And you better put up a memorial, and you better do all this shit, because I don't know, corporations like that, they should have to pay consequences for things that go wrong at their parks. I mean, like, I know it's a liability going to a park. You can always expect that something might happen when you're at a theme park, you know, it's not completely safe. But again, like, with all this money, Disney should have the top-notch safety features all the time. No matter where you go, you should feel safe. But the amount of deaths there is just kind of mind-blowing. So if you like videos like this, let me know, because there are 91 deaths at Disney, so we'll have a lot to cover. But I hope you guys are having a lovely fall. I am getting ready for spooky season. Very exciting, very exciting. If you guys have any fun spooky plans, let me know. I'm so curious. I'm trying to make like a little fall list of things I want to do, so maybe you guys can help me add to my list. But yeah, anyway, I hope that you guys have a great day. Drink some water, eat some food, stay healthy, hydrated, beautiful, wash your face, brush your teeth, and yeah, have a beautiful day. Take care of yourself and keep being the bad bitches that you are. Goodbye, guys.